Again, a very warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, a less unequal India, growth that includes anyone. The panel is very well set. You have the three finest brains as far as local and global economics is concerned, and I'm sure this is going to be an interesting one. First to you, Mr. Barua. We've had this dichotomy in India where you have a waiting list for a Maybach and showrooms of Maruti 800 waiting for people to come in. There is a mad rush for Birkin, Louis Vuitton bags, and a lot of textile companies are showing empty showrooms. What do you think is happening with this K-curve kind of a economic recovery, or a economy which refuses to set up or answer to the earlier parameters that we had?
I think is this on? Okay. I think the images that you described are indeed very powerful and emotive, but I think we need to kind of go a little behind that. Yes, certainly, I think part of the post-COVID recovery and indeed the growth process before that has been somewhat unevenly distributed. Perhaps it got a little exaggerated post-COVID. Having said that, I think if we were to just focus on this image of inequality or inequity, we would be missing some of the key issues. For instance, I think social protection, and I think Surjit will talk about it, like social protection has improved significantly. Yes. We've pulled a lot of people above the poverty line. So there are a lot of things happening. My only submission is that let's also recognize, I mean, this is a reality, this needs to be addressed in some way, but let us not knock the achievements. And the other thing that I want to add is that I think there is a very deep concern about the upper tiers of the middle class now. And I think there is some kind of a discourse of the hollowing out of the potential hollowing out of the middle class because of automation, because of the job losses and so forth. That is a genuine problem. But all I would like to sort of emphasize is that there are a lot of things happening, some positive, some negative. Let's not get entirely carried away by the negatives, and also not think that the positives obviate the need for some kind of policy and other action.
Dheeraj, let me pose a question to you. So we're set to become the fourth largest economy this year, 2025. It's obviously, we're one of the superpowers. We're aiming to become a greater superpower by 2047. But when we look at, per capita GDP income, we're still, what the World Bank describes is that we are a lower middle income country. How do you see, if we have to move towards a developed India by 2047, how do you see, improving this and improving the quality of lives and access to social service, social security for citizens?
So in one word, growth. And my complaint with the title of this session is that inequality, so that I think the title is towards a less unequal India, how can growth be more inclusive? So I think in India, we always put inequality, our concern for inequality before the concern for growth. We were perhaps a more equal country before 1991, or in the 50s and 60s, but we were equal at a low level of income. Everybody had a low level of income. So I think, what we have right now is obviously a per capita income which is about $3,000, which is still very low in the global hierarchy. So the only way you lift it is through growth. You don't lift it through redistribution. I said it here last year that we always tend to be a slice of cake political economy, not a size of cake political economy. We want, each of us wants the slice first, the equality dimension or the share dimension, but nobody really fights for the size of the cake increasing. And I think that has consequences, because the policy reaction then tends to put inequality or perceptions of inequality first. So we want to talk about redistribution and taxes and so on before growth. So unless we grow substantially, that per capita income is not going to, you know, double or triple. The only way that's going to happen is with growth. And I agree with Abhik to the extent that there has been a rationalization of redistribution and a greater efficiency in redistribution, particularly since PM Modi came to office. We do have, you know, a lot of the basic things, whether it's a gas cylinder or toilets or, for that matter, you know, direct transfers of income. So you have a lot of things happening, Ayushman Bharat, for example, so that, you know, you don't have to pay out of pocket for a major health emergency. So I think a lot of redistribution at the lowest level has happened. But, you know, when you talk about stagnating Maruti sales or, you know, hollowing out of a certain part of the middle class, I think that's a growth problem, not an inequality problem.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Surjit Bhalla is not only a very well-known economist, but a very well-known investor and of course a psephologist as well. Let's get his views in. There's a waiting list again for flats above 12 crore rupees if you are wanting to buy one in Gurgaon. And there is a waiting list for almost anything which is, you know, uber luxurious. And yet we talk about the Indian middle class being hollowed out because of higher taxes, maybe higher savings as well. A lot of money is going into SIPs. Which side of the argument are you as far as this debate is concerned?
Okay, first, I was an investor for a long time, but I've practiced economics more than I have practiced over the long run. But I want to come to this inequality, which I think is a very pointed question, which we need to dwell upon a bit more than what we have. Look, one way, and I completely agree that you know, we have given second or downgraded growth in our pursuit of redistribution. I believe we have economic reforms without growth, but maybe with redistribution. So let me make it very explicit. I think time has come for us that, and you know, I'll base it on a couple of data points. No matter how you look at it, no matter what inventive forms you bring up, that consumption inequality in India is about the lowest in the world. Is that a good thing? That's what we don't ask. So first, we, you know, the critics, etc., keep on going, no, inequality is actually much higher, this, that, and we should have more redistribution. And I think, you know, we've had enough of redistribution. No matter what statistic you look at, we've done tremendously well. The question now is, can we do tremendously well in growth? And that is where I have a lot of, not doubts, I've always remained optimistic, and I remain optimistic, but I do think that it'll be nice to have reforms that actually address growth problems rather than redistribution problems.
Can I ask you a follow-up on that? When you talk about reforms on, you know, to address the growth problem, what are the top 10 reforms or top 5 reforms you think are needed?
You know, look, forever, I mean, they are, let's date everything since 1991. That was the first serious, matter of fact, forget serious, it was the first time we did any reforms, and they were major. Now, you know, one area that was completely left off from the reform framework at all, and actually after that we've done worse, is agriculture. You know, I'm somewhat surprised to see that, and I missed the previous session, we came in late, but might have been discussed there, that we have completely ignored reforms in agriculture. On that, I'd like to point out the first serious attempt for reforming agriculture was made by Prime Minister Modi when we drafted, or he drafted, or the government drafted the farm reforms. And it fell flat. Why? Because of possibly farmers in Punjab and Haryana who are holding the entire country hostage and being allowed to do so. After the reforms fell or was not passed, the Supreme Court did a survey to find out actually what was the view of the farmers. So very democratic. Let us see how many farmers supported the farm laws. And they found the percentage was as high as 87%. Now, 87% of the farmers are supporting the farm laws. And here we have Rihanna and Greta Thunberg arguing on behalf of certain political parties. No, 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 you can't have reform. So this is, this is where we've been caught up. So first and foremost, agricultural reforms. And second is, every economist, even born-again economists have pointed out to the fact of the very high tariffs that we have in India for manufacturing. Now remember, one point I want to really emphasize, nobody ever complained about India's potential and realization of potential in software or in pharmaceuticals. Why? So we have to really think, and software is a large industry. No government involvement in either of those two sectors. Where is the maximum government involvement? In manufacturing. So forget about, public infrastructure, etc. There you can't get a foreign, well, you can get a foreign company to help build. But basically, manufacturing is pathetic where we are at, and every economist forever has pointed out the problems with our manufacturing sector, and we're still on the same road.
Maybe something will change over the next 21 days or so. Getting in, Dr. Barua, until recently you were with the largest bank in India, whether it's in terms of market capitalization or in terms of reach. Have you seen data which actually says that the middle class is saving less because it's buffeted with so much of taxes and is probably investing a lot more than what it was doing maybe 10 years ago? What, according to you, are 2 or 3 parameters which define this inequality that we are seeing?
Well, I don't think, certainly taxes do play a role, but taxes have been reduced, rationalized, and so forth. There are, from what I remember of the internal surveys that we did, and I think that was just about 7-8 months back, there is stuff happening which is very positive. For instance, we tend to knock self-employment a lot. One of the things is, self-employment is kind of skewing the unemployment data, and we should have. There's a lot happening in the informal self-employed sector. There's a gig economy which is taking off. The MSME sector, parts of the MSME sector were doing very well. They were investing. In fact, this was the first time where a sort of a tentative investment cycle was rising on the back of MSME activity. I think the problem really lies, is that big private investment is not happening. Private companies are not investing. I think the consumer-facing companies have faced over a long period of time a problem of demand. There is also a concern about, as Surjit said, the intervention of the government. Regulations, particularly state-level regulations, haven't changed. And I don't think there's been enough innovation in our country. So the startups really have been, glorified versions of jugaad, right? Which is something that a minister who will come after this has emphasized. So I think, the private sector and it has kind of run out of steam. On top of that, we've had technology shocks like AI, which has sort of rattled everyone. So I think we saw from the bank's perspective a lot of problems, not so much with the small entrepreneur or not so much with the MSME, but people who are associated with the large private corporate ecosystem and the kind of fears that they faced.
Dheeraj, coming to you with a question on manufacturing and jobs, because jobs in the formal sector are seen as one of the best ways to get out of, poverty. Why is it not happening in India? We've been waiting for years for the private sector to come back into investments, and every year it's the government which is doing the capex bit. So could you share your thoughts on that?
I mean, the private sector and private investment responds to incentives, right? So they're going to go and invest, whether it's Indian investors or foreign investors, in the jurisdiction which gives them the maximum return, or at least a reasonable return. Now, in India, in manufacturing, the biggest constraint is land. Then you've got labor issues, you've got capital issues, but that's not such a big problem for the larger firms because they can raise from anywhere in the world. You've got power tariffs which are too high because you cross-subsidize, again, farmers, large farmers, and charge industry more. You've got freight rates, rail freight rates are too high. There are too many factors which still, and then, clearances which, should take 90 days at most, take 3 years. So how do you expect, ultimately the private investors putting their money down, right? All of us are, talking, but they have to put their money down, they have to justify to the shareholders the returns they get. So I think unless the time is ripe for a second round of structural reforms, right? And I think including reducing tariffs once again, which have again gone up somehow the last decade or so. So I think without that, still, I mean, and the bureaucracy, the mentality in India is still that, and the cabinet secretary recently wrote a letter to all bureaucrats that please meet private sector people. I mean, that in Vietnam and China, the officialdom runs after foreign investors, domestic investors to come and invest, and they say, what do you want us to do? 1, 2, 3, and they do it in 2 weeks, right? In our case, the government is doing, the government is still the Mai-Baps, so to speak, right? So I think once that, if those things are changed, private investment will come. I mean, there is a market here, there is a global market, there's every reason for us to be competitive. And I think ultimately, if you talk about inequality or, if 40% of the workforce is in agriculture, they're only going to be drawn out into better paying jobs through manufacturing. And we still have a window, despite AI and all of that, I think we still have a 10-year window to generate some of these jobs. So if we can get the reforms done now, and Mr. Trump has put enough pressure, and that's a completely different debate, but there is pressure now to do something. So let's do the reforms and get manufacturing in. I mean, this is the last chance. But until you at least do half of it, even if you don't do all of it, I think just ease of doing business. I know a lot of things have been done and our rankings improved, and then the rankings themselves ran into a credibility issue. But I think there's a lot on paper, and then there's what happens in practice. And I think if you compare us to, say, Vietnam or certain other jurisdictions, you will find that there is a disadvantage there. Policy, what I call a policy-induced uncompetitiveness, lack of competitiveness.
Dheeraj, to you, as the youngest economist on the panel, what is your peer group and the boards that you address to thinking in terms of artificial intelligence? Are we headed for higher unemployment? Are we headed for a larger unequal society? What do you think is the future as far as growth is concerned and artificial intelligence thrown in?
Well, you see, some jobs will be lost. There's no doubt about it. It's just that I don't think I have the power. Maybe Surjit does. He's quite a lot more imaginative. But what jobs will come we don't always necessarily know in advance, right? But I think again, there's a particular way of skilling your population, a particular way of reorienting your education system so that people are more flexible and can do the new jobs that will come, right? Some of the old jobs will go, but AI, if it's used well, can deliver a whole host of other benefits, which will address many of your other challenges, whether it's healthcare or education in much more efficiently with much less cost. So let's not only look at AI as something which will take away jobs. It may take away some, but I'm sure new ones will come, and the productivity increases you'll see in certain crucial sectors would help a country like India catch up. Because the bricks and mortar stuff we do very slowly, as I've just said. We take years to get clearances, we get years to get things off the ground. So maybe AI will be good for us, but obviously we have to see. But I don't see it as a negative. I mean, I don't think we should be afraid of it.
Right. Dr. Bhalla, the final word to you. Are you hopeful and more expectant about India's economic future than what you were 10 years ago?
See, you put in the clause more than, are you more hopeful than 10 years ago? My DNA is plus plus, and I have never not been very hopeful about India. Even at the worst of times, I'm hopeful. I think, yes, I'm very hopeful about India. What I would say is that time is maybe running out on hope. In 2010, when China moved up the value-added scale, we were all very, very enthusiastic that now we'll get the second stage of reforms because we will take over from where China left. And what happened? Vietnam came in and Bangladesh came in, and they had our breakfast and our lunch and our dinner. Okay, so we missed that boat. And now, 15 years later, we're talking about China plus one, which should have been there in 2010. And now this is our, very close to the last chance to break through. We've got everything going in our favor, except policy. And that's a bit sad. So, hopeful because there is a lot of internal strength of the Indian economy, of our democracy, and, I'll end with the following. I think I've been puzzled a lot as to why we don't have more reforms. And this is not just now, it is, for decades. And I think the governments, whether they be coalition governments or they be one-party governments, that they're very comfortable. We're growing at 6%. Aap dekh lo, ki farak panda? So if you have to take a risk with reforms, and governments, especially with the IAS exactly the same as it was 100 years ago, then it was called the ICS. Both Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and Prime Minister Modi tried to get lateral entry into our decision making. They are on another planet, and maybe they'll come down to earth one of these days.
Maybe they will. Thank you for this lovely conversation, gentlemen, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you. A round of applause, please.
And this one